Okay, Brad here, and today I am joined by Garrett Turner. Garrett is a native of Florence, Alabama, but works professionally as an actor based in New York. I think he's currently spending this quarantine time back home in Florence. And we're glad that Garrett has agreed to join us today. Garrett is a graduate of Mars Hill, Emory University, and he has done graduate work in London. And I appreciate, just let me say, first of all, Garrett, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for talking to me and for this initiative of yours. I think it's great.
One of the things, thank you very much. One of the things that I was thinking about is sort of not just the medical, scientific, and social experiences that we're all sort of sharing, but also sort of the cultural experiences that either disruptions or changes or adjustments. And so I thought discussing those with you would be good today. Obviously, it's, I guess, probably going to be pretty easy to quantify lost revenue when we think about canceled concerts, canceled performances, shuttered theaters, which you've experienced, and I invite you to talk about that experience as well. I
Mhm.
understand that you were just beginning a play called Bayano, where you were cast as the title character at the National Black Theater in Harlem. And I understand you got one performance in on March 11th, and then the rest of the performances were canceled. So you've got that personal experience. But I want to think about those kind of things that aren't as easily quantifiable. What the arts, and in your case, particularly the performing arts, mean to a culture, what benefits and contributions the arts bring to culture, and maybe how that's changing in these, very unusual times.
Yeah, well, there's much to be said uh, because it's just an incredible and devastating time to be an artist. Uh, there is so much loss. Um, I mean, you said that we could calculate the amount of loss there is in terms of revenue um, for theater performances in particular, which is my main medium. And yeah, I think we can, but it would be an incredible figure uh, because the entirety of the American theater has shut down. Um, I mean, I think people experience theater in a lot of different ways and forums. Uh, Broadway, here in the U.S. is at the top of the hierarchy, but really that's just 41 theaters in New York City, which brings in like $1.8 billion a year and is a major tourist attraction, right? So that's all shut down. But then there's off Broadway and off Broadway, which is what the National Black Theater is a part of, which is where I was performing, which are hundreds more theaters in New York City. But then there's what we call regional theater, which are theaters across the nation that produce their own seasons. Every single one of those theaters has shut down. And then there are houses that don't produce their own season, but they house touring productions,
Yes.
like the Fox Theater in Atlanta or whatever. Literally, just all of them are shut, and it's astounding. It's just like there's so much to grapple with. I mean, the loss of revenue being massive, but I, the loss of life being the first thing that comes to my mind. I mean, I praise God am in Northwest Alabama now with my family. Uh, I got tested for coronavirus right after I got here, and thankfully the results came back negative. Um, so I have my health and my family and this comfort of being home. But I have a whole lot of friends back in New York City, um, most of whom are young actors, because those are the people I work with a lot. Um, some of whom have gotten the virus themselves and have wrote it out alone in their tiny apartments, just being sick and hoping it doesn't get worse. Some people haven't contracted the virus, but they're there by themselves, and it's like people still have to go outside to get groceries and do these runs for essential things, and they're wearing masks and gloves and sort of just hoping and praying and meditating or doing whatever they can to push aside the anxiety. But then thousands of people are dying, and New York doesn't have enough room to bury them. So there's already that kind of loss. But so speaking to like the experience of going to theater in general, though, and what that gives to our lives, I think we are losing out on on something essential to being human, which is communing with other humans.
Yes.
And that's across like all sectors, right? And we are looking forward to, whenever we are past this, to be able to get back and assemble with other people. And so some of that will be like at work, which we kind of do out of obligation often, just to like pay for our families and take care of what we need. But then there are other times, which I think can be some of the most precious times of assembling, that we choose to do not out of obligation, but because we love it, whether that's just hanging out with our friends and that sort of human touch, right?
Yeah.
Or like communing together for worship, which I think, we're all figuring out how to make this online worship experience as rich as it can be, though it will never live up to, praising God together in a room with all of our fellow Christians. But there is a particular communing that is not obligatory, but that we choose to do when we come together for the theater. That is, it's a place where we go to experience something together and to see ourselves reflected, right? Not in like a small screen like I see you now. Or like on Netflix, but like the actors are right in front of us, and they're going through what is like the heights and depths of humanity, and we are wrapped in that together as an audience, and we are practicing empathy and learning about ourselves, but also people we don't know, and we're doing it in this ritual space, in this curated experience, which I have found to be transformative, and know that it can be transformative in other people's lives. And so that's what we're missing out on,
Yeah.
beyond the money that everyone is losing out on, and what have you. It's like this chance to come together and like feel alive, but actually feel each other's spirits reflected in front of us. And yeah, it is a time of mourning in that regard. I think we're all going through, various stages of what we are losing out on, that amongst it.
Yeah, you've really helped us sort of understand not only the sheer enormity of the economic impact and the impact to people's lives, not only their health, but job opportunities, that kind of thing. But I get the sense, listening to you, that there is something uniquely human about these sort of artistic expressions. And one of the things that's encouraged me is, I think really early on, I remember seeing a couple of videos when Italy began to shut down, where violinists were playing these sort of impromptu concerts from their balconies for their neighbors, or these cultural icons are doing these sort of live concerts or things that they're doing on social media. And I think I remember reading a couple of days ago about how there was I think a 9-year-old girl from Florida, and her mom had written maybe to somebody in the original Hamilton cast about she missed out on a performance, and they got together and, through social media, performed her favorite song for her. Those sort of things really encourage me. The human ability to overcome difficulties and challenges and disruptions. And I'm wondering from you maybe can speak to that. And I'm also wondering, do you think these sort of living room sort of experiences where the theater or performers, artists are brought to us, do you think those kind of things are going to continue in some way after this is all over, when we're back to normal? Or do you think this becomes just some part of our past? Are there real changes that are taking place here?
Yeah, there are definitely real changes that are taking place. Um, you know, it's interesting. The living room performances, the performances from that are streamed or that are impromptu or that people are undertaking during quarantine, uh, are not unique in the sense that they happened before this, right?
Okay.
And and obviously, I think the most advanced form of that is TV and film, sort of writ large, which is something that can, which is again something that a lot of us are turning to during these times, which I think is important to remember and to take into account. Is that like, well, what do we do when we have all this time? It's like, well, I want to hear or see a story, and so I can go stream it or what have you. Or yeah, just like the incredibly encouraging things like the Hamilton performance, or are all great, I think, in their own right. In the sense that, like, even if it just like inspires one person or one little girl, or allows someone to get through a difficult moment in a day by being transported to somewhere else, like all of that is beautiful. But I mean, I, I think what we are experiencing, certainly in the theater community, is, since we are not able to commune and assemble in person, it's like, well, we have all of these apparati that are created to make performances and to tell stories. So do we just stop all of that for however many months until we can come back, or do we find a way to keep going? And a lot of people have been looking for ways to keep going, and I think, like, some more successfully than others, right? So it's really a time of figuring out how this ancient art form of the theater can exist in these sort of electronic or digital forms. And there's so much to be discovered. I think, let me say this, for artists, the conversations that I've been hearing, like amongst my friends or theater artists or what have you, during this time, range from, on this spectrum, saying like, we must create, we must continue to do the work, and the other side of the spectrum being like, I refuse to feel pressured to create during a global crisis. Like, really, what is the priority is our health in all its forms. So I'm gonna focus on that, and like, and I think people are everyone's experience of it is circumstantial. I think if people have the physical space and mental space to be able to create, that is a privilege
Mm.
in and of itself. The fact that I had a family with a house somewhere not in New York City that I could go to and be here was a privilege in and of itself. There are a lot of people who just lost all of their employment and then didn't have these safety nets in place, and so you're just stumbling trying to figure out your own life. But for those who not only have that space to be able to create, and also feel energized in whatever way to do so, that's a beautiful thing. And then from there, we're teasing out the specifics of it. So yeah, I think it will be enduring in the sense that theaters across the nation are being made to grapple with how do we go about this. And my hope is that it only becomes like better made and richer experience, theater, or whatever kind of performance via these mediums with time.
Yeah, and I really found it interesting that you referenced TV and film, and I think I was reading the other day, that somebody made the comment that, we're experiencing art probably more than we ever have, because we have more time to sit down and watch a television show or watch a movie or watch a performance online or visit a museum, remotely. And so it's really interesting that although how it's being experienced has changed, we're actually more connected to the arts maybe than we were before. Can you speak to yourself as an actor? And I don't know how personal you want to get, or you can just talk generally. How do you think performers, artists are going to be affected long term? And maybe you want to address the economy of it, but I'm thinking more something more, existential. Of what is it like to be an actor once the theaters open back up, once we're congregating together again? What is it like being an actor in New York, 6 months from now or a year from now?
Yeah, wow. I mean, it's a really great question. It feels daunting in a sense to even attempt to think about that, but I think also in some ways we kind of have to. I mean, so everyone's life will be changed after this, and so I got engaged on Christmas Eve last year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, and which means I bought an engagement ring in full, uh, and then I put a deposit down on a wedding venue in February, and then on March 11th I had opening night of this beautiful show Baiano at the National Black Theater, and then March 12th that show was canceled, and for a day job I work for 9 different catering companies in New York City. Um, None of those companies had any work, and there's no reason to believe that they will for months. Uh, and then March 13th, I was back here in Alabama, uh, just trying to figure out what would be next. And much of that for me was applying for unemployment and applying for relief, like emergency relief grants and funds for artists, which I want to take a moment to say I've really been inspired by the outpouring of support that there has been for artists. Just so many different people and organizations rallying around for actors in New York City particularly, but sort of writ large across the nation, which has been phenomenal. But we were planning to get married on August 1st in my fiance's hometown. But we decided to not move forward with that. And instead, we're getting married in a couple weeks here in Florence, Alabama.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So on the other side of this, my life will be entirely transformed because I will be one with my fiance, and to get married in the middle of a global pandemic is not something we were planning on. but is just this crucible that I think is truly refining us in a way. When all of your work is there and you're going out to three, four or five auditions a week, and things are rolling along, and you're feeling good, and then suddenly when it's all gone, you have to grapple with, what was the point of it in the first place? Do you want to go back to it? I think a lot of actors are will be contemplating that, like if it's worth to come back to a epicenter of a pandemic to try and continue making it in this industry that is so difficult in the first place, and where it's tough to find work, and where you're trying to keep your creative spirit open in the midst of this crazy city. So yeah, I mean, there's there's going to be a lot to face. I mean, the folks in the industry who have passed away,
Yes.
in the midst of this, and honoring those people. But it's existential in the sense that it's like society without art is a cultureless society. So we can either decide to, let this really indelibly hinder or damage our nation's culture from here forward, you know, or we're gonna have to decide to keep creating, to keep finding stories within ourselves, to keep um, showing up and standing in line and audition, and doing that even with like the added perils on what was already a perilous city. Um, but in thinking about the outcome of that, um, I feel hope because of the amazing artists that I've worked with, and the incredible stories I've been able to be a part of, and just how I feel that there will be amongst the mourning and lost an entirely triumphant uh, return. Yeah.
That's great. I love listening to your story and your experiences. They inspire me and encourage me. Your sense of optimism, I think, is well placed, and I think will help a lot of people. As we sort of wrap up, I'm thinking just like an average person like myself, who enjoys theater, who enjoys art, performing arts, the performing arts in particular. What are ways that, and I think you mentioned there are things available to help artists that are struggling right now, but what are ways that your average citizen can help right now? I know once everything opens back up, buy tickets and go to performances, but are there ways that
Mhm.
we can help you right now?
Yeah, a lot of ways. I mean, if you had a ticket to something that has now been canceled, you can turn your ticket into a gift to the theater. Um, and honestly, like that financial giving is huge. I mean, arts organizations, unless you're Netflix, are often organizations that live on a financial brink from day to day.
Right.
So to come up against something like this is unconscionable. So yeah, I would say if there's a local community theater or local art gallery or whatever, it's something that has inspired you or institution to which you're connected, I would say reach out to them and ask and donate, and just check in on them. Like we all need that in this present moment. And I think there's a lot of talk about when theater will be able to continue, and that has to do, of course, when it's safe and declared safe by government, but it's also has to do with when it's when people feel safe, right? Which might be a different
Yes.
rubric. And so I, it's like people will have to follow their own hearts and brains in relation to that. But whenever we're past that, like repatroning will be important. One other way I don't want to mention is that people have been creating initiatives of how to engage in theater and with plays during this time. So there is a new initiative that's been created called Play at Home, which is at playathome.org. And it's a consortium of theaters that have come together to commission playwrights to write 10-minute plays, um, most of which the point is to be either hopeful or playful or zany or what have you. It's something that you would like to consume and can do like with your family at home, which is beautiful. Baltimore Center Stage is a theater that I've worked at before, which is part of that consortium. That's a great initiative. There's something called Play Per View. They have in the coming couple weeks, they're doing readings of plays via video conference or chat or Zoom or what have you. And it's like you pay $5 or donate whatever you want to donate, and you can see these incredible artists do their thing, from your living room. And then there are places like Playwright Center in Minneapolis, which is an incredible um, institution that has put their entire spring season online. The Alliance Theater in Atlanta just announced a virtual play club series where you can like read these plays they're going to produce and then participate in a conversation with them. So there are a lot of different ways that people are coming up with to keep people engaged in the theater.
I love the creativity, and we hope to maybe provide some of those links in the comment section once we upload this conversation to Facebook, and that really has given me a lot to think about, but being from the Shoals, obviously we have a vibrant arts community, and I love the encouragement of, okay, think about your local theater, think about your local artist, and figure out a way to stay engaged with what they're doing and what they bring to our area. And people can do that all over. I'm really excited that you've joined us today, and really have really personalized, I think, what a lot of us are sort of intuitively experiencing. And this has been encouraging to me and helpful. And congratulations on your engagement and your sooner than expected wedding. And I wish you and your fiance all the best, and your family stay safe. And I hope everything begins to come back together for you very soon.
Well, thank you so much. And I just want to give a short shout out to Mars Hill Bible School, which is where I went to high school, and to Jeremy Painter and Laurie Mitchell and Joey Durr and JJ Davenport, who are all holding it down for the arts out here in Northwest Alabama and really like inspired me into the place and career that I have today. So thanks y'all, and thanks to you, Brad, for doing this. This is dope.
Thank you. And my kids have learned a lot from those same people, and so it just continues on. And thankful for you, and thankful for all of you, what you contribute to our lives. And stay safe, and God bless.
Thank you. Likewise, brother.
Take care.
All right. Peace.